Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Municipality of Monroeville Citizen Night and Council Work Session. If we'd all kindly rise for the Lord's Prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for one of our officers, William McAllister. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please remain standing for a moment of silence. We did lose another officer here in Monroeville, Officer Bill McAllister. We send many condolences to the family with such a loss to Monroeville, if you would all please. Thank you. You may be seated. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll open up the citizens portion night of our meeting. And I'm just going to go right off the sheets as they are. Tom Wilson, if you would, please.
Do you want me to sign in again? Or?
No, I have your name, but just please state your name and...
Okay, Tom Wilson, Monroeville, candidate in the 7th Ward for council. My question tonight is under column B, 5th and the 6th ordinances. I'd like to know when council voted to advertise these ordinances in order for them to be put on this tonight. Did you vote for him, Mr. Duncan?
No, I didn't.
Diane?
I've never voted for one ordinance we put on any to be advertised at all.
Yes or no, Diane?
No.
Thank you.
No, sir.
Lois?
To what ordinances do you refer?
5 and 6. Mr. Griesbach, have you voted for these?
No.
To be advertised?
No, I've never voted for any.
Mr. Erb?
I've never voted for an ordinance at all
Okay.
to be put on anything in 4
So therefore,
years.
these can't be here tonight. They have to be advertised before they're put before council. And they have to be advertised for 10 days before, and council has to vote to advertise these. And then they have to be advertised for 10 days before the next meeting. And so therefore, 5 and 6 are not able to be acted upon tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Please.
in 4 years, I've never voted on.
Well, I think that's wonderful. I commend you for that. That's not my point.
Mr. Mayor, I'll address this to you. I'm not going
Yes,
to talk
please.
to
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom, calm down. Go ahead, Bert.
the bottom line is, we have never had a policy where we have.
Oh, yes,
voted-
there is a policy.
Tom, wait.
You know what?
Let me
Wait,
tell you
no,
what.
no.
But Tom,
You know
let
what,
him
Mr.
finish,
Mayor?
and then you
Mr.
can
Mayor.
have the floor.
No.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'm done. 6 months of this. I'll see you at the voting meeting.
Great.
I'm not going to put up with this
Great.
tonight. I have work to do. I've got a job tomorrow. I don't need to listen to
Great.
this.
Great. Yeah.
Calm down, everybody,
Okay.
please.
So,
Mr. Dice, would you clarify our policy that we're required to do, please, legally? I mean, legally
I
what
was
is
going to turn
required,
to Mr.
please?
Dice.
Okay, every community that I represent goes through a process of adopting an ordinance. And every one of them brings up an ordinance, and the council looks at it, and then there's a motion made in a second to advertise it. Now, there has been, I think there have been times when we've done it that way. I think there's been times when it's not been done that way. But that's how it gets on the agenda. It's an action item. It's an expenditure of money.
Okay.
Just to clarify, in my 25 years of working in the manager's office, at first, we never even advertised ordinances prior to their adoption. They were placed on the agenda. By our home rule charter, and I can't quote the section number, but ordinances are only required to be advertised after adoption, not prior to adoption. So we do it as a...
Ordinances are supposed to be voted on.
So-
The advertising of ordinances
Correct.
are supposed to be voted on by council, and then then you advertise the ordinance, and then you can take action on
We
the
have,
ordinance.
we have never done that, Mr.
Well,
Wilson.
I don't care if you've never done it.
Well, I'm just telling you, in the past
Right,
25
right.
years, we've never done that in the
Well, then
protocol of
it's
this
been done
municipality.
incorrectly.
So according to the Home Rule Charter, we advertise ordinances after adoption. We recently, under Mr. Little's regime, started advertising ordinances prior. Mr. Dice agreed with that, and we advertised them the week prior to the meeting to give residents notice.
Well, then this, right now, what's happening in 5 and 6 is illegal.
Thank you, Tom.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Why just 5 and 6?
I'm sorry? Well, the other ordinances you have talked about, the general budget, the amendment to the general budget, the capital improvement budget, and the others are resolutions up in here. But basically, 5 and 6 are the most important.
No, I agree. I was just curious on why just 5.
Tom, I know this. In the past, I have asked a couple of times to do an ordinance, and I was told by Mr. Dice, our solicitor, that I could not do it unless it was first advertised.
Because why?
It had to first be advertised.
Right, okay.
That's what I was
Okay.
told.
So,
And some of these were advertised, correct?
They were all advertised.
All 7?
well, show me the proof that 5 and 6 was advertised.
They're in the newspaper. They were in the
Well,
newspaper.
did council vote to advertise them? No. Council has to vote to advertise them. Therefore, these are
Under
illegal
what-
tonight.
Under what ordinance or part of our Home Rule Charter, Mr. Wilson, does it state that?
Let's ask Mr. Dice.
My position has been stated. I'm not going to do a lot of repeats. If there's an expenditure of money, council needs to act on it. You just can't go out and do things. Now, I'll grant you that that may have been the activity here, but you're asking for the strict letter of the law. That's the case.
And an ordinance is,
And let me add one more thing. There's no question that the charter says you must advertise after. The charter's wrong, okay? Pennsylvania state law came along after the charter was written. There's a specific Pennsylvania statute that you must follow, and it talks about advertising the ordinance prior to its passage. That's why we now go forward and advertise prior to its passage. And that's what we followed since Mr. Little.
Were all 7 of these advertised?
Yes.
Okay. So are we following the letter of the law?
That
Mr. Dice?
satisfies the legal requirement.
Okay.
But doesn't council have to
That's your
vote?
point. I think that's
my
the point you're making.
Council has to vote to approve the advertising of the ordinance.
because it's an expenditure of money advertising,
Right.
correct?
Right.
I'm trying
Therefore-
to understand.
Yeah, but understand, legally, this has been advertised.
I got you.
Okay. Okay. But my question then is, did you vote to have this advertised, Mr. Griesel?
I do not.
I don't think that I voted to have this advertised either.
Thank you.
Did not, sir.
Diane?
I've already answered your question.
Well,
No.
well, everybody
I've
answered.
never voted to have any ordinance advertised,
Thank
ever.
you, thank you.
I did not.
Mr. Duncan, Mr. Ramsey?
I don't think it is.
Okay. So therefore, these aren't illegal ordinance tonight.
Okay, Teresa Enval Peterson. Hi, folks, you already signed in, just state your name and obviously where you live. Not your address.
Teresa and Val Peterson. We live on Willow Hedge Drive.
You didn't have to give your address, but Monroe.
It's Willow Hedge, well, it relates to our subject, so. We're actually one of multiple Willow Hedge residents here this evening that would like to speak to you. And we're here as a last effort to convince the municipality to please take action for the inadequate storm water system in our neighborhood. We have pictures that we would like to share.
If you can put them maybe up on the center of them, see the camera right above you, kind of center them. Joe, can you?
Jim just has to put them down there.
Okay.
Do I have to flip or something?
Yeah, you'll have to
Okay.
You might maybe move it up a
Push it
little
closer.
You want to move that side?
Push it closer to the table.
There you go.
We've lived on Willow Hedge Drive for 25 years. We moved in 1988. In 1989, we experienced our first flood on Willow Hedge Drive. We live in a split level. We don't have a basement. Our sliding glass door is level with our yard. We flooded the next year, again, called the borough to come out and look at our property, which they did. They came out and walked the property and basically told us that there was nothing they could do. It wasn't their problem. So we went about our business. We have been flooded more times than I care to remember in the last 25 years, and it is getting worse. We have pictures, as you can see, of the water just coming in our back door, our kids swimming in the backyard. This is a picture of our neighbor's basement that we had to call the fire. We had to call the fire company to come in. They were on vacation because all the outlets were underwater. These are just other pictures of the damage to our house. You can see in these two pictures, especially to the right, where the water ponds. It forms in our neighbor's backyard, it overflows, and it just comes down in a path right onto our back porch. We kind of got the system down pat, how we have to try to keep the water from coming into our glass door with sandbags, and we have big sheets of plastic and rubber, and we put a picnic table down, and then we take wet vacs and just keep the water going onto the porch as we try to broom it out until it goes away. This is a picture of our neighbors, the Coopers, who live 3 houses away from us. The water went down their driveway. You can see where it is on their garage doors, trashed a car, trashed their basement.
Well, may I interrupt? Now, is that in the major rains or is that just any rain? I mean, I'm not talking about the rain where it just drops. I'm talking about if you have a steady rain.
On September 9th of this year, it rained twice. Water got in our home twice. The Coopers lost another vehicle, and it was not a heavy rain.
It happens 3 times a year,
Oh, my God.
and that's when we're home. I mean, we're at work some of these days. We come home and the basement's wet.
For the past 25 years, we have tried doing numerous things. We're now to the point where the only thing left we can do is have either a wall put in, which will now cause either my other neighbor to flood, or more water to go onto the street, or dump dirt and build a hill. And from what I understand, I can't do that because then I can be sued by the people in the neighborhood that I'm now flooding. So we're at loss now. There's nothing further we can do. Now, this picture this shows you the waterfall that comes down the woods in our backyards. And it's coming from a pipe, from a drain on Logan Ferry Road by the entrance to the Evergreen Park. It comes underneath the road, through the hill, and dumps into the woods. It goes nowhere else. And then it finds its way down and floods. That's our direct problem.
Let me ask Paul, have you had a chance to look at this?
I did. I spent some time out there actually yesterday, and Jamie Sawyer from my office has spent some time out there. It's a combination of problems. You know, they talk about water they're getting from the wooded area behind their homes, and then you get water from the street. So it's a combination of things. They're unfortunately in the low-lying area, so they're at the lowest point.
But I'm not in a flood zone.
No, you're not. Absolutely not. So after looking at what's actually built, we came back and pulled out the old files to see what was supposed to be built versus what is there. And I keep hearing about the pipe that leaves Logan's Ferry Road, which is an interesting thing on its own. But this was developed in the early 70s, before there was stormwater management requirements.
I understand that.
And it was built under those standards. Actually, the subdivision that occurred where most of these people are getting flooded was not part of the original subdivision. Those particular lots were left out of the subdivision because that's where the stormwater conveyance system was supposed to be built. After that point, the developer came back in and tried to subdivide these properties where these homes are built. The municipal engineer at the time had recommended against it because it was the low point, and that's where a detention basin was supposed to be built. Obviously, it wasn't built, their homes were built. So they're at the low point. The conveyance system that was constructed probably would not work in today's standards. One of the additional problems that I found was the pipe of Logan's Ferry Road, which we looked at yesterday. Somebody has intentionally put a cap on it. It is blocked up now. They riveted a cap. It was actually chicken wire and bricks stuffed in it, so it actually doesn't function. So the problem with the road is the water backs up on Logan's Ferry Road. It follows Logan's Ferry Road to Willow Hedge. It goes into the conveyance system of Willow Hedge, which can't handle the capacity of the water, and now is overflowing the roadway system into the homes.
Well, can I speak for a minute?
Oh, sure.
Quite frankly, when I took a picture the other day of that storm sewer, I thought the borough did that when they also dug a trench to divert the water out of that pipe.
No, the municipality did not put a.
Can we fix that, Paul?
Can I speak?
Yeah, you'll have your time. Yeah, hang on.
I mean, can it be
And-
removed, Paul?
I'll let everybody come
Oh,
up.
it could be removed. I guess the problem that you have is the system is inadequate now, and this water is being bypassed into the system, which is just adding more water to it. And the system ultimately ties into Upper Dahlia Drive, which we have documented flooding on Dahlia Drive because of this development. So any more water you put into the system, it's going to flood the downstream first, which is the Dahlia Drive Upper Garden City area. So can it be rectified? Yes, it's just going to cost money to do that. The pipe that they're referring to exiting Logan's Ferry Road, the closest point to tie into is about 500 feet away. But it's also the same pipe that collects the water from the entire system. So you have a volume issue. The pipe's just not big enough to handle the rain events that we've been receiving. So
Let me ask you,
If the pipe is not working,
I'm sorry.
you're saying the pipe is,
it's not allowing 100% of the water out of it.
Well, thank God, because if that's the case, that's what happened to me in July.
2 times in a week.
I understand. I'm just telling you what is there. The pipe is partially blocked. And when it does that, the water goes into a different section.
But
How
what
far
else
is-
has changed in 25 years? Because our neighborhood hasn't. And we're being flooded more frequently with more water.
Yeah, hang on one second. Go ahead, Bruce. You want to?
Do you know what it would take to solve the problem?
That was my next question.
We have tossed around some ideas. I mean, it's a matter of putting in larger pipes
Are you
for
able
the
to-
conveyance
Are you able
system.
to come back to council next month with some
Not,
sort-
not next month, but yes, we are working on the
2
problem.
months?
What's that?
How
2
many
months?
months?
Yes,
And can you come up with a concept plan of what it would take?
absolutely. And again,
Get a look.
we're going to talk about capital improvement projects soon. So this is obviously a prime candidate for that.
Capital improvement budgets for what year? 2014?
That's up to council, ma'am.
2014?
So we'll get flooded a couple more times.
That would be the budget they were looking at.
Yeah, we were already in 2013, that is.
That's what I'm asking. Is this something that would be considered for budget item for 2014?
Yes. Is there anything that you can maybe even do to help alleviate a little bit of that right now even? I
Because
can't
of,
imagine they're not. I'm not an engineer, but
behind their homes is the park, Evergreen Park. And it is a large hillside. And it generates, just purely generates a lot of water just because of the size of the hill. And it's just flowing to the low point. And unfortunately, they're at the low point. I mean,
Again, my question is there anything you can-
we found some schematics in the file that they had showed, obviously in the 70s, somebody anticipated this happening, of putting in earthen barriers to divert the water to a collection point, but that collection point is where the homes are at today.
Okay, well, the mayor's question is there any temporary remediation that can be done now?
That's all I'm saying. Is there something we can help all these folks that are having these
Well,
issues?
the problem is that we don't have anywhere to divert the water to.
So the answer is no.
Could there be a
Right.
collection?
And on top of that, we're still trying to locate the conveyance system itself, because where the catch basins and manholes are at are very close to their homes. As a matter of fact, I don't know whose home has one right at the corner.
Yeah.
That's
literally-
ours.
Yeah, which
Literally
is-
at the corner of the house.
That's not code.
That was
It is.
covered when we moved in. We found that gardening.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's at the very, you couldn't even work on it, it's so close to their house. And then there was one today we found in the backyard of Mrs. Kranick's house that they're covered up. So we're still trying to uncover what is actually there.
But even if mine was uncovered, it wouldn't help the situation. There's two catch basins in the neighborhood.
The whole collection area.
Paul, could there be a collection point in the park itself?
No, because it's too high.
Oh, it's at the elevation.
Yes, it's too high.
I have a question. Is the portion of Evergreen Park that, you said that was higher? Where I'm going with this is that the same area of Evergreen Park where there's been a lot of ATVs and there's been a lot of erosion?
I do not know about the ATVs.
Okay, because if there's anything that might, I don't know, mitigate it, it certainly is not going to do it quickly. It's the type of vegetative swales and the tree planting you might be able to put in the surrounding area.
We have banana trees grown in our yard to suck up the water. There isn't another spot for a tree
No,
or bush.
and I'm not actually talking about your yards. I'm actually talking about the park itself, because my understanding about part of that park is that because of ATV, it has eroded a lot of trees, which of course suck up a lot of water.
I don't know where the ATVs are
Yeah,
running.
well,
'Cause
there
we
are
have-
portions of that,
We
they
have the
ride through.
paved path that leads up to Evergreen Park is what goes behind our property.
Okay, yeah, and not knowing how it is in relationship to you, I'm just trying to come up with something that if there was a way to suck up more water by planting, then that might be, the area to plant in. That may have absolutely no bearing on it. That was a question. So I take it that park is not, anything that happens in the Evergreen Park wouldn't mitigate this by way of tree planting?
No,
Okay, all right.
trees aren't the answer.
Well, I know this probably is not going to help you guys out right now, but Paul will work on and come within 60 days or less, hopefully with a plan that we can work that will help everybody in that area. I wish I had more answers or better answer for you.
And how will we be informed of that plan? Because I've written letters and emails and placed phone calls, and nobody has responded to them, although there's been a lot of activity in my backyard in the past 2 weeks.
Well, let me put it this way. If, we have your number here, and who else lives in that area, I assure you will.
Mayor, I have their letters. I mean, I have them. I didn't want to respond to them until we figure out what is problem.
We all wanted to say something.
No, I'm going to give everybody the other opportunity. I'm just going to go in the order that you all signed in, okay? John Yakum? All right, we'll do that.
Good evening, John Yakum, Monroeville. Mr. Mayor, Member of Council, Manager McKinney, Solicitor Dice, good evening to all of you. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to address you in council this evening again. During the past month, we have begun to see those responsible for the terrible violation of personal privacy and individual liberty held accountable. However, we have also had several examples of retaliation for individuals doing the right thing. Mr. Mayor, at least 2 members of one of the local fire departments have been disciplined for either cooperating with law enforcement or urging accountability. We have heard of a member of council threatening a public official with embarrassment and humiliation. And most frighteningly, we have had our own municipal manager, her husband, and their children threatened in a most disturbing fashion. Mr. Mayor, it is my opinion that you are partially responsible for the harassment and the threats that have been made to all of these people. You have let the meetings run amok. You have let residents attack other residents. You have permitted meetings to become a free-for-all. You have threatened residents who exercise their First Amendment in the ultimate free speech zone, the social media. Mr. Mayor, you have repeated a known untruth about a member of council's husband repeatedly. You repeated the lie so often that by the time she was able to provide documentation that it was untrue, many uninformed voters began to repeat the lie themselves. The media has even reported that you have made at least one threat of physical violence yourself. Mr. Mayor, this has to stop. What are you hiding, and what are your political cronies trying to hide? This situation is out of control. Last month, police officers showed up to a council meeting on their own because they perceived a threat to their manager and to their fellow citizens. Residents have sent letters to you and to others stating their concern about their safety and the safety of officials at these meetings. Mr. Mayor, we need our public meetings to return to civility. Mr. Mayor, this is one of your charter-stated responsibilities. I urge you to control the meetings. I urge you to exercise leadership over your political friends and allies. Mr. Mayor, I also want to thank publicly those that have stood up to the relentless pressure to continue to stand strong and to continue to push for the truth and the facts. To the firefighters who have cooperated with the investigation, Chief Pascarella and Manager McKinney, I can only imagine the pressure you are facing. Thank you. To Councilwoman Drumheller and Allison and Councilman Urban Ramsey, thank you for standing strong against intense public attacks. Many of us know and appreciate that you have placed the needs of the community ahead of your personal needs, and in many cases, the needs of your family. These are truly selfless acts, and many of us appreciate your sacrifices. Continue to do the right thing for our community. I know many of us have you in our prayers daily. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. You know what, instead of jumping around, and let's just do this here. All the folks that have the water issues, maybe just come on up one at a time, and we'll just check you off. State your name, so come on up, and then you can all come up together if you want. I mean, that might not even a bad idea.
Sure, that's fine. Hi.
State your names. You don't have to sign in because you already did, but just
My
state
name
your
is
name.
Crystal Kranick. This is my husband, Tim Kranick.
Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you, and thanks for having us.
Please state your names, folks. Very good. Anybody else with the water issues? Come on up. Just state your name for the record. Nice to meet you, and
John Cooper.
nice to meet you as well. Okay.
I live on 386, right next to the Petersons that spoke previously. And, you know, she basically covered a lot, so I don't want to kick a dead horse here, but we've been after this since my first complaint was in 2007. And I was told it's not our problem by one of the engineers. So in the meantime, I've come home from vacation in September, which we don't vacation in September anymore because we might flood, to 3 feet of water in my basement. We had to get rid of everything. I've had nightmares. My husband has had to leave work every time it rains. My children have, you know, they're grown now, but they were babies. They're 14 and 16. Oh my God, Mom, it's raining. It's raining. We're going to flood. It's horrible. It's absolutely physically and emotionally horrible. And it's gotten worse in the past 5 years. And there's something going on in talking to my neighbors because people are having groundwater issues also, not just the stream of water in their houses, ground issues. And about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Evergreen Trail Park was put in. It was paved behind our house. After that was put in, the trail, we don't live right behind Evergreen Park. Evergreen Park is up
off the side.
right,
Yeah.
but behind us is that nice pathway you put in.
It's
But
a road. It's an
it's a
asphalt
road.
road to create a raceway for all
That,
this water.
that made the situation worse.
Because
My
the water
backyard
flows
never
down the
dries,
road.
ever. This summer has been the absolute worst. You go back there and you sink.
Now, if I could, the water that we're talking about for most of these people isn't coming from that park. That hits our backyards and a few of us. And I would ask the question, and I don't know, and you may not off the top of your head, but I'd like to know, the catch basin regulation, we've got 30,000 square feet of asphalt roadway. We have one catch basin fed by a 15-inch pipe that hits the system he's talking about. That's for half our neighborhood. That doesn't include roofs and all of the drains. Everybody's gutters go to daylight. They don't tie into the system. You can see where they hit the road. Road hits two catch basins, one feeds the other, one 15-inch pipe drains our entire half of the neighborhood. I don't know what code is, and code should take into account slope. This isn't flat. It's fed by two roads that dump the other half of the water from on top, because there are no catch basins there, to the bottom.
And we're one of the highest elevations in Monroeville.
The airport's next to us.
Yeah.
But we have those runoff issues, and again, I'm sure the neighborhood was built before the new ordinances.
They were.
But is Monroeville not held to those? We have to get to meet them. I mean, it's wet all the time. We flood all the time.
We have two humidifiers running in my basement. There's 55 gallons. I empty them twice a day, every day.
It never stops.
And if I don't have them running, where I keep my storage in the basement, my suitcases are moldy, everything's moldy. So I have to run that to our expense.
But we're not in a floodplain.
Hopefully, Paul will work up a good
Yeah,
plan to help everybody.
I'd like to add a couple of
Sure.
comments. My name's Nancy Richmond. This is my husband, Mark. We live at 503 Willow Hedge. We live on the in the court on the upper end.
Our backyard almost abuts this dead-end pipe.
So a couple of things. In the years that we've lived there since 1989, we've had 3 floods. We also experienced, unfortunately, a fire in our home, and our entire home had to be gutted and restored. At the time of the restoration, they had to gut the lower level where my son's bedroom is. And found mold because of all of this BS. And we had to, at our expense, $10,000 plus. Not only did we have to restore our whole home, we had to also shell out this money to restore that bedroom so that it was safe for our return. We weren't allowed to return until all that at our expense. I want to submit this to somebody, because I submitted this email, and I talked to Sedlak in numerous times.
Sorry, Joe.
Related to our situation. The contractor also was willing to talk. At that time, we were informed that there is actually not the pipes were not actually attached, and that there was more piping that was actually routed, more water that was routed to this area at one point in time. So I'd really like you to really check that out. Maybe the facts are wrong, but that's what I was told. I was also told that there was a gentleman that was on vacation at the time, Mike Adams. He was on vacation. And Mr. Sedlak said that Mike Adams would contact us. Calls, letters, whatever. You know, it was exhausting. This was an exhausting period of time for our family.
I'm sure.
We had already dealt with 2 floods previous, one when we were on vacation completely and came home, destroyed everything. We had to redo bedrooms, furniture. It was ridiculous. And then come to, when they're restoring our home and having to take the wall out and finding mold and having to do complete mold restoration. Okay? So that's what we're dealing with, all in writing, and I have more in writing that I'd be glad to share with all of you. Records of calls, nothing returned. This was the last straw, and I was so emotionally distraught at this point. And we'll be over, we'll be over, we'll be over. What can we do for you? Nothing. So I feel for all of us, all of us. And, whatever the situation is, it needs to be resolved. This is totally ridiculous. And we're not in the lower.
You're on the upper end.
We're on the upper end. So, whatever all these theories and hypotheses, really, really look at the situation and resolve it. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We've got new families that are welcome to the flooding every year.
Yes.
I've been there. I was the first one to buy a lot there, off Chapelay, and it was Volpe, and they were in partners together. This is years ago. And this is the worst I've ever seen it. My backyard is where all the water goes. knock on wood, I don't have any flooding in my house because I have a sump pump. But
We-
that thing
we put a
runs
pump-
and
sump pump
runs
in
and
as well.
runs.
I have one too. I still get flooded.
Internal French drains, a second
Oh, I'm
one.
on a
is we
high,
had to put.
mine's, well, it's great, it's a little different. Then I have French drains in and out of the house, and the sump pump. And the pipes are not runoff water, they go right into the storm sewer. So the guy that built my house covered all angles. He says, because you're in a low area there, you're better off with a sump pump. I didn't even know what a sump pump was then. Now I'm glad I have it.
We had to put a sump pump in, external French drains, and with this, when the situation with the mold, they had to jackhammer or whatever you do with concrete and put internal French drains.
But some pumps
That's
don't
what's
work
in
when
a-
the electricity's off.
Yeah,
Because I have a
that
sump
problem.
pump too.
That's fact.
I had that problem.
Yeah.
My basement did flood when the sump pump.
So we bought a generator along with dehumidifiers.
And it is accurate that they came, they did come once, and they put a trench. They said that it was temporary, this was back in July at this time.
Of this year?
This was, no, July
July of
2011.
Mhm.
Okay.
They, whatever they did, built some sort of little trench and
Yeah.
put some
They-
gravel
they
in there.
built- They built a trench and said they'd be back and put in
Yes.
some pipes.
Yes.
And the trench is
They
kind of
being
gone now, it's
Public
all
Works.
silted over.
I'm sorry?
They being Public Works, is that?
That's correct, yeah. And I have all their names, and their names are here, and all of those.
If I may, ma'am.
Things, yes.
I just asked Paul, is possibly, do we have any mine issues in that area? And he
Yeah,
did say.
unfortunately, the monocrop is in that neighborhood.
Because I've known down below you people, we've had a lot of issues in the Garden City area down below. I'm just wondering if possibly we could get a hold of them also?
Well, part of the problem we're seeing throughout the municipality is it's because of the amount of rain we've been getting this year.
The mines are
The
full.
mines are full of water. And during heavy rain events, now, they're talking about groundwater. The mines might be, they're overflowing.
Are we sure, though, that there's no
No, but
perforations in the sewer pipes?
Oh, no,
down
no,
there
no,
and all that, you know?
obviously, there are issues with the storm source system, but I'm just saying
Well, the
possibly
storm
we
source
could
is
get
inadequate.
DEP involved also.
I
You know,
think
as another
the thing
entity.
that has to occur is a total root cause analysis and manage the risk here, because it's beyond,
Put a new route in.
you know,
Well, I think you folks bringing this here made a big difference. Obviously, I didn't know, I only knew some
well,
of these issues.
it's
not
very
all of them.
unfortunate that these
Well, we didn't think
issues,
we had any recourse when we were told by the municipality, it's not my problem.
well, and
So,
even
I
when
believe them.
when they agree to
Naively.
come and do something about it, you know, I was probably fairly hysterical on the phone. I was pretty calm when I wrote this, and I think if you read this, you can see that I took the time and expressed exactly what was going on.
Thank you. Yeah, if everyone else is
John.
finished,
Yes,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
want to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good, John.
it's
Go ahead.
complete. I-
state your name again, sir.
My name is John Cooper,
Thank you.
and thank you. Hopefully, everyone's not too fatigued about this issue. I have some unique differences with the others in how my floods have occurred, and I've got some dramatic photos I'd like
You
to
can
share.
certainly put 'em on
Would you like
camera
me
if
to
you like.
pass these out to you?
No, just
I have
let me-
copies.
You can put them on,
A lot
on
of
camera. You have to put it center, you see where the camera's right above you?
Right.
Now look right up above you.
You're right.
There you go.
So I can go through this a little bit.
Sure.
My experience is a little bit different in that all of my water comes in through the front, right from the street, and I don't have the problem from the woods and from the backyards and so on. And my flooding has occurred 3 times in the last 6 years, and other than that, our home has been pretty good. However, I should point out, my house is actually at the low point of Willowhead Drive. The catch basin directly in front of my house, in between my house and my neighbor, is the very lowest point. And so what's happened with us is in 2007, 2009, and then again this past September 9th, what occurs is all of this water from the surface comes to my front door, basically, and the water builds up on the street, and I'm sorry I didn't print larger photos because it's not doing too much on the screen there, but what you'll have to bear with me and imagine in the top left photo here where we see this with the mailbox, there's a foot of water on the street there, and it's 6 inches above the sidewalk. And when that happens, it all rushes down, and it happens immediately. And we watch that drain like a funnel fill up. When it gets to the point where it's above the sidewalk, it comes down my driveway. And that's what this picture kind of shows, this picture kind of shows. And all of this happens, it happens in maybe less than 10 minutes. It's like the sinking of a ship. You know, we're going down, it's coming up in 3 feet of water in about 10 minutes. And so it's difficult to be prepared and to get things out of the way, so we're scrambling. And we've been rather unfortunate in that in 2007 we were out of town and there was a car in the garage. 2009 there was a car in the driveway, and I didn't realize how deep it got in the driveway, so that car was affected. And then we're very aware of this problem now, but I chose the first week in September to work on my father's car, and so I was replacing the alternator, and that one wasn't going to be moved out of the garage. So we've lost a lot of things. We kind of are getting used to it, but I just thought I'd like you all to hear sort of the unique nature of ours, which is a sort of big event every 3 years, or every 2 years actually is what it's been. So hopefully, and I guess we've talked about this, but, and I don't know that you'll make it out in this image. You won't, because you can't really see the resolution
John,
there.
could you hand me the copies?
Yeah, maybe pass out the copies, that'd probably be good.
Thank you. I'll just hand them down.
But the point I wanted to make here is that where the catch basins are on Willow Hedge are really ineffective, because if you look at that intersection here, where the catch basins are beyond the intersection, so the water does not reach them. It makes a left turn. And so it goes down to this single catch basin in front of my house when we have this big event, so it's the sort of flash flooding that occurs in this case. And, I don't know what's the cause, and I'm sure there's a solution to it. I mean, I think that there's space behind my house. There's a possibility of maybe an additional pipe or a way to collect that water back there. But however it's done, I think it's clear that this is going to continue to happen. It seems to be 50% every year that it's going to happen to us, where 3 feet of water and appliances, and we really can't use the basement with any certainty. We did have laminate flooring and drywall and things, but really can't use that area right now.
Well, hopefully, and this is for all you folks, hopefully we'll have a good plan within the next couple of months. Obviously, because winter's on us, we're not going to be able to, even if we have the good plan, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do too much about that this winter. But I assure you, come spring, we'll get right on that. And Paul did correctly say that would be a good project for our capital improvement, which is, you all remember, we do that 3 years in advance. In other words, we will take a bond out to do projects similar to what you're describing to us now. And I know that doesn't help you right now, but to be very honest, that's the best we can do now, but at least you're going to have some relief coming. And I don't know, that probably doesn't make you feel any better right now today, but I assure you we will get that on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you listening. And, the first time it happened, you think it's once in a lifetime. The second time, and then the third time, you start seeing a pattern. So that's sort of why, I'm here. And so, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I had just a couple more questions. I just wanted to make sure I understood that someone had mentioned there was a path that was made for the park, and that after that path was put in, it became sort of a waterway. Was that correct?
Craig's Raceway for the spill pipe, it's the only catch basin on the upper road. For 150, 200 yards, there's one basin. 14-inch pipe feeds that into the park. That now feeds down that road 200 to 300 yards, dumps into Leo's backyard, creating a raceway, an asphalt raceway.
So there are more factors than that pathway,
But
yeah.
that's the top road.
Sir, you have to come up
There's only one
to
catch basin on the bottom.
microphone.
She's right. She's right.
That's the question I had.
Yeah, and the other one was what the statute of limitations might be for the developer, because that was a developer in the 1970s who did not take the advice. And, well, then
Good
they...
can't ask, Kirk Handler.
They had a site plan, obviously, they had a subdivision, and they came up in front of then council, and against the advice of someone that was passed. So you're saying the statute of limitations has expired?
I think it's going to be a difficult problem because you had your municipal engineer at the time recommending something that planning commission and council didn't listen to.
So two bodies, one didn't recommend, and, one often follows the recommendations of the other, so. But the developer, there would be they would have expired any kind of statute of limitations to address with any assistance from the developer.
I guess it's more of a question for Bruce.
That's my question then.
How many years ago was this? 35
It
years?
was in the early to mid-'70s.
35 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Is there a developer around anywhere?
He's dead.
But she said
Son's alive.
Okay, well, the sons of the fathers don't pay for the sins of the fathers.
Right.
Exactly.
Here, one of the problems is even if the statute hadn't run, you're going to get blood out of a stone. And the statute, I think, is 12 years after a plan has been finally approved.
Okay,
And we're 3 or 4 times that.
yeah, okay. Needed to ask. Thanks.
Well, again, folks, let us get the plan from Paul. Please, stay in contact with us, obviously.
Will you let us know? Will
Yes.
you give us steps that you're taking?
Well, we'll
Make
do
sure
it at
that you
a,
got your names with Paul. I mean,
yeah,
that-
we'll
that's
make
the
sure
most
everybody we'll get all your
Because we're
information.
going to work through
Paul.
him.
And in 2 months, basically, December, fair, Paul, that you should have something that we can look at?
Well, understand, I got to expend some money to do this that I may not have because my budget was reduced.
Well, I think that council should then consider, whatever this cost would be. I think that would be appropriate. Yes? So let's, again, I don't want to answer for council. I don't have any vote up here, but I would like to think that they would certainly support your endeavor in that.
I'll tell you this real quick. We as council, whatever it takes, we'll look into it. And that I give you my word. I can't tell exactly what we'll do, but I promise you that we will look into it.
Did you have to vote on appropriating funds for him to do something?
Well, that's what I was going to, Paul, would that be engineering?
We'll have to look into it. I
Engineering
don't know
fund?
where it is, but I promise you, we'll look into it.
What's the process?
What does that mean?
How does the process work?
Well, let me put it this way, Paul. Do you have an idea what it would cost to even,
Not at this time, no.
you think maybe you can have it ready for Tuesday? Again, I know I'm squeezing you, but.
I don't have my head
they've got
wrapped
an
around the
issue.
whole problem yet, so I really
I think
can't
he's
throw a
still
number at it.
investigating.
So would it be unreasonable to ask to give till next month where you
Yeah,
could get?
well, by next month, absolutely.
By the next council meeting that we could possibly have something? I mean, would that be
Some
unreasonable to you people?
I'm sorry?
By next month, if we could possibly have something tentatively, he could have an answer for you guys. I mean, it may not be the exact model, but at least it'll be something.
Not necessarily an answer, but
An answer.
how much it's going to cost to perform this analysis.
So we can get the ball.
So we got to perform an analysis.
Yes, he's going to go. and
Absolutely.
Survey and do everything in front of
So we'll get the
Well, but just so everybody knows, he has to do that, because obviously it just is, it's part of the engineering. Sir,
My name is Arnold
You
Levitt,
have to come up.
yeah, come on up here.
and thank God I have not been a victim of the flooding. I live across the other side of the street from my dear neighbors. And I think my concern here is, I promise you we'll look into it. I think we're more or less dealing with time frames. When are these things going to happen, and, little benchmarks along the way so we can know this is done and that's done, and we need someone to set up an agenda as to what to be done when, because right now I haven't had a flood, but who knows where to go next time. It's coming off the airport, down by my property, through it, down to their side of the street. They may decide to stop and pay me a visit. So no one's immune. So I'm asking you today, the first step is a month from today, right?
That is correct.
And what should we know then?
I'm sorry. Obviously, the cost for Paul to put a management plan together, if you will, and there will be benchmarks for when things will be done. That's part of, they do that on a regular basis for any job that they do.
Okay, now, another part of my question. What it would cost at that point? Because you also identify the cost to do what, so we know what kind of things you're looking at.
That would all be broke down, am I correct, Paul?
It will.
That's public knowledge, there's no national, yeah, you can, we'll share that.
Okay. Thank you.
That'll be part of the engineering study.
Yeah, that's part of the engineering study, all the breakdown on the various costs.
Thank you.
Sir, did you sign in?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We're going to stay with the list unless you have one of the flood issues?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay, well, come on up.
My name's Paula Quinn, and I live next door to John Cooper at 384 Willow Hedge.
If you could sign in, please, ma'am.
I just signed her in. Okay. Well, just sign, well, I don't have your phone number, so sign in, put your phone number
Okay.
down there.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've heard from all of my neighbors on all of the things that were lost, and I think the most frustrating part of this situation is we can't get coverage. You can't get, it's not covered under your homeowners. We don't live in a flood zone. We can't buy state flood insurance, so we have no recourse. And like John said, you can't keep anything in your game room because you don't know when it's going to happen again. It's a terrible feeling to be at your friend's picnic and it's pouring down rain and you have to leave and rush home hoping that your garages and basement aren't flooding. And I've lost a lot of material things as well as things that I can never replace. Both my parents are deceased. I had a file full of recipes that were my mom's. They were all handwritten. It's gone. I mean, the flood took them away. I have 18 years of my children's pictures of the beginning of their life. I have them, but I had to hang them up on clothespins on my line, and they're not real easy to look at now. So I just want you all to know that as well as the material things, there's things that can't be replaced. So if there's anything you could do to stop this, to correct this, that's what we need to see.
Thank you, Paul, and I think you all made your point extremely clear. I mean, there's no doubt. So again, let Paul do his due diligence, if you will.
I just have one final question.
Come on, you have to come up to the mic.
Should we all plan on being here then next month's meeting?
I think it would be a great idea.
Okay.
Because you know what?
I don't want you guys forgetting about it.
Well, no, you know the old saying, the squeakiest wheel gets the most oil, so.
Thank you.
Oh, we're squeaking.
Good. Anybody else have any flood issues before I go back to our list again?
I think they asked about the date, Mr. Mayor.
I don't really understand the process, though.
You have to come up to the mic. I'm sorry to do that to you.
It may be, I'm a project manager, so I'm really used to some more specifics in terms of dates, timelines, et cetera. So I really didn't understand fully what, between now and next meeting, that you hope to bring to us.
Basically, you have to develop a plan of what we're going to do.
Okay.
That plan is going to have expenses associated with it because you have to do a survey of the entire area. We have to do a inspection of all the storm source systems to see there might be a downstream pipe that is blocked, collapsed, not functioning properly. But to do all this is going to take time and money to understand what that is going to be.
So is it a plan and a request for funds?
Yes.
So then it would have to go through the procurement of getting those funds?
That's
and then
correct.
how does that work?
It's a councilmatic action.
Okay, and how long does that take?
The capital improvements program was prepared a month ago, and
Okay.
council decided to table that until
Okay.
January, till new council takes over. A project of this magnitude would then in turn go on to a capital improvements program.
Okay.
So
And then
council would have to add that onto that
I know
program.
there's been a lot of movement with positions in Monroeville. Will Paul be here through?
Are you leaving us, Paul?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe somebody should tell me.
Just so
No, I'm
everybody.
I'm not trying to be
I know you're not. It was my fault.
sarcastic or anything
My-
like that.
my
I'm really
fault.
not. You know, so you'll come with some level of a plan that will have requests for funding, and if that funding gets approved or the capital expenditure, you'll have a timeline
Right.
associated
I
with
mean,
that?
you need to understand, and I understand what everybody's telling me here. And I understand there's a lot of water, but we have to really do an analysis of what happens when you put all that water into the system on Adelia Drive. What's going to happen? I don't want to push this whole problem downstream,
Nor do we.
you know, and have those folks come up here the following month going, we're getting flooded. You know, we have to look at it from a global perspective of what is going to happen to the system.
And so that'd be great, so we'll be able to see. that
And just
type
so
of-
everybody knows, you want to make Marcus on your phones or your calendars, November 7th is the Citizens Night, and November 12th is the regular business meeting, if you will, for next month. So Paul will have some of that information for you.
For which meeting?
Probably the 7th or the 12th. You'll have it by the 7th for Citizens Night for them to,
Tell me when you want it.
7.
7th. Okay, we're going to move on with some more folks here. Lou Smith.
I'm Lou Smith from Monroeville. Let's start off a little different tonight. I'm going to tell you about one of my favorite quotes. Matter of fact, I think so much of it that I got it in my scrapbook with all my police work stuff. And has to do with this country. This was a quote by Alexis de Tocqueville. I believe he was a French diplomat that traveled the country over a century ago. And upon doing that, all the travels, he made the following quote before leaving. I sought for the key to the greatness and genius of America in her harbors, in her fertile fields and boundless forest, in her rich mines and vast world commerce, in her public school systems and institutions of learning. I sought for it in her democratic Congress and in her matchless Constitution. Not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits flame with righteousness did I understand the secret of her genius and power. America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. I think that's a heck of a quote. I wonder what Alexis would do now if he came into this country. We may never have heard this quote because of what goes on in this country today. We've seen our moral fabric of this country go into a dumpster. I'm not going to expound too much on that because that has with nationwide politics. We have our own problems right here. But I can tell you this. If Mr. Tocqueville came into these hallowed halls right here the last 8 or 9 months and listened to what went on here, what transpired here, that led to the dismissal of our chief of police, Douglas Cole, and every other thing that's happened here, I have a feeling what he would have done before leaving here was go and throw up in each corner of this building and catch the first ship back to Paris. Now, last time I spoke here, I said there was 3 radio operators fired the last time I was here. 3 of them. Mr. Rudd, Mr. Gerstacker, and Mr. Funyak. I said it was my belief that they were collateral damage. more or less to give a little cover because it seemed like everybody was picking on Mr. Cole, so I think they had to be sacrificed. But there's a but to that. Coincidentally, since the last meeting, Mr. Mayor, there was a visit, I believe there was a visit by Councilman Ramsey up here to the Borough Building, and Mr. Funyak was called in, spent about 3 hours up here with Lynette McKinney, Chief Pasquarella, and Susan Worksman. And after being here for 3 hours, all of a sudden, about a day or two later, lo and behold, Mr. Funyak's back to work. The other two aren't. But Mr. Funyak is a fireman, Mr. Ramsey's fire company. Coincidence? I don't think so. It's just a little bit of what's going on. It's a continuous process here in this community. Now, this happened a little while ago. The next thing I'm going to bring up, but it goes to show you what goes on here, that there's no questions being asked about. Not this last hiring of police officers, Mr. Mayor. The ones before that. We have a uniform code here in Monroeville. And in that uniform code, there are certain specs on uniforms. Well, these 4 new police officers, a few months back, were directed to go over to a uniform store in Monroeville to get their equipment and their uniforms. There's only one problem with that. It was $8,000 some odd dollars spent over there of public money. The chief of police is the person that sent these 4 officers over there, and the uniform store was owned by his sister. Now, I have a problem with that, a big problem with that. It's a conflict of interest, and I think it's an ethical violation. And after this was done, this was signed off on by Mrs. McKinney and Susan Worksman. So he committed a violation, and they supported it. And I think something should be looked into in that regard. Actually, all these police officers, because the uniform company could not supply the proper specs on those uniforms, the police that are out here right now are out of uniform. They don't have the spec uniform because that uniform company couldn't get what we wear, or what I did wear at one time. The third thing and the last thing I'm going to speak on. I was sitting at my TV the day after I think it was a day or 2 days after I was up here the last time, and I said, I know what was going to happen to Doug Cole. That shortly after that meeting that he was going to be fired. Little did I know, it took less than 24 hours. And Mrs. McKinney fired him. One of the greatest individuals I've had pleasure to meet out here. She fired him. I think I said last meeting, there's a man with 100 years of community service with the fire, the medics, and the police. 100 years in a 53-year-old body that he's given to Monroeville, and he's tossed out like a garbage, like in a garbage can. Lo and behold, I'm watching TV, and a day or so later, Channel 4 comes on at 11 o'clock news about a threatening letter. And believe me, I saw the letter in the paper. And anybody that threatens a public official, I certainly believe that if they're caught, they should be arrested and the full force of the law come down on that person. But I've seen this playbook before. And actually, I had to actually smile to myself. I said, gee whiz, I heard this before, and I've seen the page out of that playbook. I'm not going to expound on that. Since that time, I've had a phone call that my name's been mentioned. My name's been mentioned. Something to do with this letter. Well, I can tell this council and you, Mrs. McKinney, and everybody here, I had nothing to do with this letter. Where the information came from, I don't know. All I know is I got a phone call and I know it come back to me. So, let's cut to the chase. I'll tell you what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to get on a polygraph. The investigator investigating this case can pick them. State police, FBI, whoever they want. I'll get on a polygraph and I will prove that I had nothing to do with this. Doug Cole will take a polygraph. And I'm sure if I asked the mayor here, he would probably take it. Matter of fact, I'll ask you right now, Mayor. Would you take a polygraph? I mean, you're a supporter of Doug Cole. There's no question about that.
Sure I would.
Okay, that's three of us.
I'm in.
Here, we got another volunteer. But there's a but to that. Just so we're all on the same page here. I also want to request that Mrs. McKinney, Mrs. Allison, Mr. John Yakum. John, are you willing to take a polygraph?
I'll take your polygraph.
Okay.
I will as well.
And Chief Pasquarello.
Will you also take it with regards to the threat you made to my husband?
Pardon me?
Will you also take it with regards to the threat you just recently made to my husband?
Me?
You told someone to tell him? Will you do that as well, too, while you're taking it, since we can do it all at one time?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
But don't interrupt me, please. Anyhow.
I just want to save some money.
We have, so if they're willing to do this, I'm willing to do it. And then we'll find out where the rubber hits the road. That's all I can say. And believe me, if everybody here passes it, I will personally come up here and publicly apologize to you for. The other ones I won't have to apologize to. That's all I have to say.
Leo, and I'm sorry I can't make out your last name. I apologize. Oh, okay. Very good. Rich LaPiccolo. Thank you for coming, folks.
Thank you very much.
Rich, you want to hang on a second? If you folks with your water issue would like to leave, we'll give you a couple of seconds to go. Sorry, Rich.
No, that's okay.
My audience has disappeared.
Your audience left you, Rich. What did you do to him?
God. I ran 5 miles before the meeting, but I did shower.
Rich, it's been requested that we take a 5-minute recess.
Oh, that's fine, sure. Not a problem.
Sorry, folks, 5-minute recess.